All right, good morning. Supernatural Christmas, part two for Mornings in the Word today. We're creeping closer and closer to Christmas Day, the birth of Christ, and we are looking at some of the supernatural experiences that happened with Jesus and around his life, and we're just kind of going to look at how awesome and how out of the ordinary Jesus is, and Christmas Day specifically is. So. I'm gonna be jumping all over today, starting with Philippians 4, Philippians 4:13. What we're gonna look at is what Jesus taught about the supernatural and what he taught us to expect. So we'll start here with Philippians 4:13, and we're gonna be moving around a little bit today. So here we go. All right, 4:13 Philippians. For I can do everything through Christ, who gives me strength. So, and I know that verse gets used a lot and taken out of context, but what Paul is saying here is, he's talking about he can live with a lot or he can live with a little. He can do whatever it takes, and he can do all that stuff because Christ has strengthened him. Christ has given him his strength to weather the storm, basically. So all things through Christ, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Moving along, we're going to go to Matt 19:26. Matthew 19:26. Okay. So Jesus is talking about rich people and how it's hard for them to find the kingdom of heaven. This is where he talks about a camel through the head of a needle. Or through the eye of a needle. And here's what he says after that. The disciples were all like, well, if the rich can't be saved, who can be saved? And this is what Jesus says. Humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible. So, what Jesus is saying to his disciples here is, in our own strength, in our humanly strength, we're not capable of much. We're so limited on what we can do in our own strength. But when God is involved, everything is possible. There's nothing off limits. There's nothing out of the realm of possibility. And that's, Jesus taught that in a lot of different ways, too. Okay, skipping along here, Mark 9:23. There's a point to all this. So we will settle in here shortly. We'll say Mark 9:23. Jesus was going to heal a guy. He was possessed. And a little boy, and this is what the father said, Jesus, if you can help him, please help him if you can. And Jesus says, what do you mean if I can? Jesus asked, anything is possible if a person believes. And the dad said, I believe, and the demon was cast out instantly. So anything is possible if a person believes. All right, so we're going to settle in here now in Matthew 14:22. And we all know this story, when Jesus walks on water. And Jesus walking on water is supernatural in and of itself. Like that's supernatural. That isn't a normal thing. It's not something that people are used to seeing, but he is, he is God. He is a deity. He was on earth in a human body. But he is God. So, that's supernatural. But you can understand it because he is God, and it makes sense that he's capable of something like that. But what happens when he's walking on the water is what really speaks to those verses I just read, and then also ties in with how supernatural Jesus really is. So we're going to pick it up right here. Jesus walks on water, Matthew 14:22. Here we go. Immediately after this, they just fed 5,000, and Jesus multiplied the food, which is a supernatural event, but we're going to pick it up here. Immediately after Jesus had multiplied the food and the fish and the bread and fed the 5,000, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent people home. After sending them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Something unique about this passage here, too, is this is like it doesn't say exactly how many hours, but it's like 2 days straight. And Jesus, John the Baptist was beheaded. The disciples got sent out. They came back, and they fed the 5,000. And now Jesus was just going to take a few minutes up on the mountain by himself to kind of pray. After all that had happened, he still hadn't gone to bed or anything. After sending them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from the land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you." Walking on the water. "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter, this is where the supernatural starts. The human supernatural. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong winds and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. And Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back in the boat, and the wind stopped, and the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. After they had crossed the lake and landed in Gennesaret, when the people recognized Jesus, the news of his arrival spread quickly throughout the whole area, and soon people were bringing all their sick to be healed. They begged him to let the sick touch him, at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. Still, he's still going. He had a few hours of prayer time, and he's still going. But anyways, what I find interesting, and what is the real supernatural thing here, is that by faith, Peter walked on water. And that's what those 3 verses I read, the Philippians 4:13, the Matthew 19:26, the Mark 9:23, those all things that if we believe with Christ, with God's strength, we can do all things. And that's what this lesson about Jesus walking on the water, it wasn't just, hey, look how awesome Jesus is, he can walk on water. But it was, but the real lesson was, if we trust Jesus, if we have faith in him, we can do the things he did. Jesus even said at one point, "You're going to do all the things I've done and more." But you have to have faith. You have to have faith. So by faith, Peter was able to walk out on the water. And Jesus even, once Peter looked around and saw how terrible it was, he sunk. And the first thing Jesus says is, "Peter, why do you have so little faith? Your faith was there, and it just went away." But in our lives, it's the same thing. If Jesus initiates a walk on water situation for us, and we have faith, we can walk on water, literally, in our lives. Like, different things in our lives where the supernatural can occur, and if Jesus initiates it, or Jesus invites us, or Jesus is there in our storm, and we say, "Jesus, help me," and he does. I mean, that's the testimony we want to share. That's something that's supernatural happening today. We can see an example from the Bible here of lots of supernatural experiences, but they're happening today as well, and that's important to allow those to happen, to have our faith, and have so much faith in Jesus where we know that if Jesus wants me to, I'll walk on water. If that's what he wants me to do, that's what I'll do. And likewise, if he wants me to go talk to that person at, whatever, that person at the store who is having a bad day, if Jesus wants me to go talk to that person, I'll go do that as well. Walking on water can look a lot of different ways. It doesn't necessarily even have to have anything to do with water. We can walk on water in our lives just by our faith, just by faith alone, and that's what Jesus wants from us. So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up. Tell somebody about Jesus today. Come to church, Whole Life Church on US 12 across from Dollar General. Get excited! It's almost Christmas. Supernatural is happening right around us.